And welcome back to Edinburgh. You were here 20 years ago, I think you said.
Yes,
So it's nice
great
to
to be here.
Good. And we're so delighted that you've come to speak to the Asia Scotland Institute tonight. And I'm much looking forward to hearing what you're going to say about your new book about China's economy. And it's particularly interesting for us because the purpose of the Asia Scotland Institute is to educate and inspire tomorrow's leaders and to increase their understanding of Pan-Asia, within which, of course, China is such an immensely important element as the fastest growing economy and the biggest. I'd like to start off by you just giving me your idea of where China's economy stands and what its future direction is likely to be.
Sure, happy to do that. So I'm quite aware that there have been a lot of negative perceptions about China's economy. A number of experts have been out there saying that China is on a path to collapse because of high debt levels or because of other unsustainable developments. And I try to address all those issues in my book and why I actually disagree with that prognosis. So I like to begin with an analogy in that I think countries are like people. They go through phases. And I would say that China now is in its teenage years phase. So from the time modern China came into existence under Chairman Mao to about WTO time, when they entered the WTO, I would say that China was in its childhood phase at that period because they were clearly experimenting with a lot of new policies. A lot of the policymakers were quite inexperienced and had situations they've never seen or dealt with before. First, trying to run a communist country, and then trying to transition it into a capitalist society during that period, and made lots of mistakes where they experienced high unemployment, high inflation that led to Tiananmen Square, and so this was the childhood phase. And from WTO till about now, I would say China's leaders had entered its teenage years where they clearly had grown the economy very rapidly, had learned quite a number of lessons during this time, and have become increasingly sophisticated in their toolkits on how to manage the economy. And today, I would say China is probably in its late teenage years, where it is increasingly looking and acting like an adult ready to take on leadership responsibilities. And so from that standpoint, China as a young adult is quite healthy from an intrinsic point of view. And that is not to say that China can't collapse in the way that a young man cannot suddenly die because he gets into a gang fight or gets himself into trouble taking drugs. And so China similarly can make drastic mistakes. But short of that, I don't think that China's economic health is in danger.
That's very interesting. On the basis that the United States has not regressed under President Trump's administration, which clearly there have been changes, how do you feel China is reacting to Trump, and what's your prognosis for how that's all going to play out, U.S.-China relationships?
I believe that China is being very careful with how they deal with the U.S. U.S.-China relations actually had been becoming increasingly tense over the years, especially over the Obama years. And when Trump was campaigning, he certainly had a lot of anti-China rhetoric, which caused China to take notice. Since Xi Jinping's visit
to
Mar-a-Lago, exactly, I think that the rhetoric has somewhat reset from the U.S. point of view, but that is not to say that the Trump administration still doesn't have an aggressive China agenda behind the scenes. And I think all that negative rhetoric in the beginning was a negotiating tactic to China. And China understands that they need to work with the U.S. in a way that provides U.S. face opportunities so that U.S. doesn't feel insecure in its power relations around the world.
Sure. Moving to Europe, we saw here in the UK under David Cameron's leadership, and with George Osborne as the Chancellor, the heralding of a new golden age of relationships with China. Yet there's been an election, Theresa May is now the Prime Minister, we've had the Brexit vote. How does China view that? The relationship with Europe and a UK that appears to be coming out of Europe?
Well, I believe that the Chinese are going to work with the UK in a similar manner as they were working with Greece.
Yes.
So Greece was on the verge of leaving the EU at one point, and seemed like sort of a broken economy at the time.
A basket case economy, wasn't it? People were trying
and they may be saying that about the UK now,
mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's going to deter China from working with the UK in earnest,
mm-hmm.
because China, I think, will see it as an opportunity to strengthen relations, actually. And China has approached a number of basket case countries in the past, particularly those in Africa, with the attitude that, well, we were a basket case at one point in the not so distant past.
Yeah.
And we were able to change our fortunes and become a very strong economic power. And so I believe they're going to have the same attitude with the UK and say, well, we know that sometime in the future, it's very possible UK will turn around and surprise us all again.
Mm-hmm.
So it would behoove us to become friends with folks who are down on their luck at the time, and they'll remember it later on.
Great. And thank you. We're all looking forward to hearing more later on this evening about your book on China's economy. And I know there'll be a lot of questions from the people that are there. And we are again immensely grateful to you for coming up north to Scotland to be with us today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Roddy, for having me.
Thank you.